Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in to another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some very dangerous developments and latest updates when it comes to the fronts, both in Lebanon and in Gaza. I'm going to start off with Gaza. In Gaza, today, the Palestinian authorities in Gaza, they said that approximately 150 people were martyred in massacres in Jabalia. And when we talk about Jabalia, that's in North Gaza, no one is able to reach them. These people have nothing. They have no food, no water. The hospitals are shut down, no civil service. Israel prevents every civil rescue services to reach the people who were dead and wounded. And the situation is beyond imagination. Now, Israel is doing that deliberately, as they have been across throughout this whole genocide. And despite the fact that they are committing such barbaric atrocities against the civilians, they are not making any progress when it comes to the Palestinian resistance. Yesterday, we spoke about the attacks that they had from Al-Qassam brigades. Today, they had more attacks from Sarai al-Quds, the armed wing of the PIJ. And they're continuing to fight back. There are talks about certain proposals coming out to suggest that we might have temporary short ceasefires. And in Lebanon, we're hearing talks about full, complete ceasefires. The talks that we're hearing about temporary ceasefires are relating to Gaza. We're hearing some news about potential proposals coming from Egypt about short-term ceasefires during which there will be humanitarian relief and some people will be released, some of the Israeli prisoners of war, and the Palestinian hostages, if you want to talk about it in correct terms, who were kidnapped. And then when it comes to Lebanon, a statement came from Nabih Berri. He is the man in charge of the negotiations when it comes to the United States administration and Hezbollah. He's saying that we're talking about a full-out ceasefire that wouldn't be different than the UN Resolution 1701. Now, there's talk, but on the ground, there's nothing to prove that we have any progress towards a solution or a ceasefire. Because Israel and Gaza, well, they're committing a genocide and a starvation campaign. And in Lebanon, it does not appear that they are doing anything to de-escalate. As a matter of fact, Israel today said that the last month was the worst month since December 2023, when Israel now is confirming that they lost over 59 Israelis in the past month, including people who are fighting in Lebanon. Now, that tells you that they are intensifying. Today, they confirmed that 5 were killed from their genocide forces in Lebanon, including senior figures. And Hezbollah confirmed that they took down 28 tanks in the past month. These are very large numbers. I mean, we talk about the tanks, talk about 4 in terms of crew, and many of them can hold an additional 4 as forces inside these tanks. So again, you know, Israel might be hiding the numbers. It wouldn't be surprising, but the levels that they are confirming are the biggest we've had for a year. All of these things signal that we are not looking to see any sort of solution or a ceasefire. That's not looking likely, especially with the increased threats about Iran. And this was the main thing that I wanted to focus on in this live stream. And of course, afterwards, I'll open the space up for the community. Firstly, the Israeli Broadcasting Authority today said that the cabinet, the war cabinet, the genocide cabinet, they authorized an attack on Iran. And they're only waiting for Benjamin Netanyahu's approval. They're waiting for the political approval for this operation. Now, the thing that's holding them back, according to that report, based on the Israeli Broadcasting Authority, is the fact that Iran might attack immediately. Now, that's very likely. Firstly, we had multiple statements from Iran saying that they will retaliate against any Israeli aggression in Iran. And we also had statements that they will be responding immediately. Recently, the tone intensified. We will strike back multiple times harsher. We will destroy your infrastructure. But today, we have something different. Today, we have threats coming from Iran, in particular from the IRGC chief, who is the man in charge, really, and who takes the biggest role when it comes to the IRGC and its operations abroad. He made this statement here. IRGC chief moots ground offensive against Israel. Firstly, there were only talks about a potential attack, missiles, drones, something that we were used to, potentially collaboration with the other resistance fronts. But this is the first time that we're hearing about a potential ground invasion coming from Iran against Israel. So what did he say? The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, Hossein Salami, ramped up his rhetoric against Israel on Thursday, hinting at the possibility of a ground invasion operation just as Israel appears poised to launch a strike on Iran. We gave the Zionist regime this message. Look at the operations of Fath al-Mubin and Bayt al-Muqaddas. See if it can stand against another Fath al-Mubin, Salami said, referencing grueling Iranian infantry campaigns from the nearly decade-long Iran-Iraq war, which ended in 1988. In particular, there were 3 campaigns at the time. One of them was called Fath al-Mubin, one of them was called Bayt al-Muqaddas, and one of them was called the Path to Quds, or Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken. And these campaigns were successful campaigns that Iran conducted against the invading Iraqi forces at the time, and they ended with Iranian success, and they gave the Iranian forces momentum. However, the reference to them when it comes to Israel is hinting at a potential ground invasion to Israel. Otherwise, why would you want to mention ground operations when it comes to Israel, referencing the Iranian-Iraqi war? If a ground operation begins, can it escape the scale of our Bayt al-Muqaddas operation in 1982? He added, and he's talking to Israel, he's approaching Israel. The offensives were critical in forcing Iraqi forces out of southern Iran. Iran launched 2 aerial bombardments against Israel this year, once in April and the next in October, in the first direct confrontation with its arch enemy, the Islamic Republic's near 50-year history. It has never fought Israel with ground troops, which is correct. Salami also dismissed the US-provided THAAD missile defense system, which has been deployed in Israel in anticipation of further escalation. Do not rely on the THAAD missiles. They are limited, and you are depending on limited power. The US deployed 100 troops to the region this month, with President Joe Biden reaffirming his commitment to supporting Israel. Israel, preparing for possible further conflict, has requested an additional THAAD system from the US. According to Israel's Channel 12, THAAD, designed to work alongside the Patriot system, can intercept threats at ranges of 93 to 124 miles. Salami's remarks come as Israel prepares a retaliatory response to Iran's attack with 181 ballistic missiles earlier this month. Well, it's not really retaliatory because Israel started it. Israel's planning an aggression. like they committed aggressions previously. The October 1st barrage was retaliation for Iran's assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut last month, and likely the killing in July of Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Although most missiles were intercepted, again, that's not true. Most missiles landed in October. Some or few hit military and civilian targets. Again, most of them landed on the military targets. Now they're starting to causing minor damage again. We saw the destruction. Anyway, what we wanted to hear is the main thing here, apart from the other stuff. The threat of a ground invasion coming from Iran. Now, how likely is this to happen, and is there a potential need for it? Does Iran need to send troops, and if they would, through which front would they send them? Because we had talks in the beginning about, potential people going from Iraq and Yemen. We had reports that were in some points inaccurate about certain troops going from Yemen to Syria in preparation. We saw, indeed, senior figures from the Iraqi resistance in Lebanon as early as since the war began, really, after Hezbollah's participation, showing, of course, solidarity with Hezbollah and willingness to support them if necessary. Now, the facts on the ground show that Iran doesn't necessarily need to send forces to attack Israel, because if we want to talk about the Lebanese front, which is one of the fronts, at least, where we would likely to see a limited invasion or a large-scale invasion, of course, alongside Syria, again, unless the resistance front and Iran are planning any surprises. In the case of Lebanon, Hezbollah themselves, they don't need more people because they have people fighting in the south. So what would be the need for Iranian forces? Well, really and truly, there wouldn't be a need to conduct the day-to-day operations. However, if we want to talk about a large-scale operation going to inside the occupied territories, you might need more people. Why? Because you need people, both inside and outside, to make sure that everything is functioning properly. Now, when it comes to Hezbollah, of course, they can conduct their operations normally. But if you want to have a large attack on Israel, then you might need additional forces. That's where Iran could play a role. And not just Iran. We had statements coming from Yemen previously. Yemen, as a matter of fact, they conducted many military drills that resembled ground invasions in Israel against certain settlements, Israeli posts. And when it comes to the Iraqi resistance, only one movement from the Iraqi resistance said that we're willing to send 100,000 troops to Lebanon to fight with Hezbollah. But again, we're talking about a large-scale scenario. What's different this time is the fact that Iran, indirectly, but with a very large hint, really, is signaling that they can potentially send troops, most likely to Lebanon or Syria as well, to participate with Hezbollah when it comes to an invasion to the occupied territories. This is something very dangerous, and it's a new development. This hasn't been something that we were hearing before. We were hearing mostly about a potential retaliation from Iran when it comes to missiles, mostly missiles, because that's their strong point when it comes to Iran. Drones maybe, UAVs, but a ground invasion, well, primarily due to the geographical differences and the distance between Iran and Israel, there was no genuine need for that. And if Iran would bring up the subject of a potential ground invasion, then you're no longer talking just about a retaliation from Iran. You're talking about action from Iran that goes beyond an act of retaliation. This is the important thing. Why are they saying that? They're saying that because they are feeling and they are realizing that the attack on them can happen at any given moment. We're hearing reports coming from the United States, and the fact that some people say that they're worried that Israel might be conducting an attack without 100% coordination with the US. And again, how reliable is that? Not really that reliable, because Israel, at the end of the day, all of the weapons that it's using and all of the arsenal is coming from the United States administration. And just the other day, they gave them over $5 billion in emergency aid to Israel. So Iran is feeling that the attack is imminent. Therefore, they need to level up their leverage and level of threats as well when it comes to Israel, to warn them that they might also be conducting certain things that Israel did not expect. That's also due to the fact that Israel told them previously, we might attack you, or we might conduct an attack, not directly to Iran, but in general, they said, that isn't really expected. Now, what's not really expected? When they previously said that we will be using weapons we haven't used before in Lebanon, we saw the massive pager attack, where they targeted thousands of both Hezbollah operatives and civilians in one of the biggest terror attacks in history, using mass consumer goods, technology that's used by the masses against people. Yet again, some people were like, oh yeah, look what Israel's done, right? So they might resort to something like that in Iran. However, the success of that is not really guaranteed, because many countries already took precautionary measures when it comes to any attacks that would involve like technology or attacking pagers and things like that, because even Venezuela took certain measures after the attacks happened in Lebanon. However, Iran is preparing. And another thing that we heard that could also hint to preparations coming from Iran, and the fact that they might expect an attack coming from Israel and the United States administration that they didn't necessarily see before, is the statement of the supreme leader of Iran, Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who said that the enemies are using complex, the war is getting complex, and the enemies are using complicated means to try and hurt Iran. So we've established by now that nothing is conventional. We're not talking about a conventional war. As a matter of fact, the majority of the wars or genocides that were conducted by Israel and by Western establishments and Western countries were mostly non-conventional. And we wouldn't be expecting anything different when it comes to Iran. The only difference is now there isn't an argument that was as strong as it was 10 or 20 years ago against Iran. The propaganda machine isn't working properly. Everyone is seeing what's happening, at least those who are concerned about the matter. They're realizing what's happening, and everyone's saying, well, Iran has a right to defend itself, right? Or why is Iran not doing even more than what they're already doing against this genocidal entity? That's why you don't have a very large coalition when it comes to Israel and the United States. Like, firstly, the United States, they haven't really confirmed that they will be participating in anything to attack Iran. That's number one. Number two, well, there is no coalition. What coalition? We're talking about some Western countries, many of them traditional Israeli allies, having embargoes on Israel now, banning weapons from Israel, preventing Israelis from attending expos in Western countries, and also calls to take people coming from Israel who might have a suspicion that they participated in acts of genocide, taking them to court. We had a request in Britain, and that was approximately 6 months ago when the genocide case started, saying if you're coming from Israel and you have been witnessing any acts of genocide, please report it to the authorities. Now, why is that? It's because they indeed are interested in taking potential actions, or at least recording people who have committed war crimes in Gaza, in the genocide in Gaza. And now we have more cases being taken to the ICJ against individuals who are suspected, because don't forget, many people are bragging from Israel. And we have tracking websites now, and people actually tracking them. There's genocide tracking, looking at who's committing what, and potentially taking them to court and adding their names. So, in short, and to wrap up, there are certain talks that are saying we might be seeing certain de-escalations in the coming days or weeks, both in Gaza and in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we're talking about something more permanent. In Gaza, we're talking about something short and temporary and split. Both of them do not provide us with any reason to be hopeful, and are not full of substance that we can say, oh, well, something might happen because the talks are genuine this time. Israel is taking certain measures and they're reducing their numbers of forces, or anything else. The only signals that we're seeing are the complete opposite: more aggression, more forces being deployed. Israel intensified its attacks in Lebanon, all across Lebanon. They've intensified their attacks on the southern suburb of Beirut. And now they're openly taking down buildings, civilian buildings, with the same US weapons that they were using against Gaza. So although there is some talk about a potential de-escalation, there is nothing on the ground to support it. The only thing on the ground, and from the things that we are seeing, is the fact that we are headed towards something much bigger than what we have seen so far. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. I'll open up the space for all of the community. Check if you have any questions or comments. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Let's try and get to the comments from the beginning. If you wouldn't mind, if you have anything for me, just highlight it so it's not missed. Albert Saladluz: NATO's Ukrainian proxies kill 100,000 Russians at the cost of 1 million Ukrainians. Is that not a good deal? Well, they're trying to cover it up. They always try and cover it up. They never talk about the levels of casualties when it comes, the actual numbers of casualties when it comes to the Ukrainians. That's for all of those people acting like they care about the Ukrainians. You don't care about the Ukrainians. The only thing you care about is serving the United States establishment and the attempts of the US to expand its hegemony and eventually control Russia. You're not interested about the Ukrainians. We talk about conscription in Israel, likewise in Ukraine. No, not likewise. It's far worse in Ukraine. We saw people being dragged to serve in Ukraine. People kidnapped from their homes, young men, people taken from their weddings, people buying these realistic masks, right? Silicone masks to look older and flee the country. Any athletes who, for example, play football because they have an exemption when it comes to sports, some of them go to play in Belarus, a country that's supporting Russia in the fight against Ukraine. So it's all over the place, and they would want to hide this from you. And again, don't forget the mercenaries. They were recruiting people from all across the world, because it's legit, right? Because it's legit this time. It's their war. It's the US. So they were opening the space for people to volunteer, recruiting them, in the US, in European countries, all across the world. Come and fight, for the liberty and freedom and democracy. And And the people go. The people go as cannon fodder. They get trapped in this cycle of blood and death. And the people at the top are making money. Who's making money? Well, Zelensky's making a lot of money. But the people supplying him with, with weapons, they're making money. And who's paying for it? Who's paying for it? That's why they want your sympathy. You're paying for it. The American people are paying for it, and the European people, any tax-paying person in Europe and the United States, is paying for it, or in any other country that supports them. That's why they need to generate this artificial sympathy so that you can support this ongoing war. And now they're linked with the war in Gaza and the tensions between Israel and the other countries. They're linked more than ever before, and we actually saw a United States attempt when they ordered Zelensky to go and attack nuclear facilities in Russia and invade Kursk just after Russia was supporting Iran, and Shoigu had certain visits to Iran in preparation for an Israeli or potential American attack on Iran. So they're sending a message to Russia that, look, don't meddle too much in that region. Otherwise, we'll do this here. And when did that come? That came after there were many talks between multiple mediators and Russia and Ukraine about a ceasefire. As a matter of fact, Putin in the BRICS summit, he was thanking people at the BRICS summit for trying to become mediators and try and reach a solution between Ukraine and Russia. Jimmy Eyes, I heard that Al-Qassam attacked a major IDF base in Gaza. Any info? Well, two of them. Well, the first one was the main command base in what is called the Netzarim line. That's the area in central Gaza, slightly to the north, that Israel wants to establish as a permanent base to cut the north from the south and start establishing Israeli settlements, or squatting bases to be more accurate, in the north. That's why they are on this massive campaign in the north now. So that was the first attack. They attacked them with 104 missiles. But previously we had a large ambush against the whole base, and it's constantly attacked. The Netzarim line command base. Israel has 3 points in that area, in the central part, to the eastern part, and in the western part as well. The second very large attack that was conducted yesterday was, funny enough, in Jabalia, the area that is facing this genocide now, this starvation campaign. They had the capability to go and attack the main base directly, as in with men, not just like attacking it with... No, they went there, fighters from the resistance. They went there and they attacked them, and they confirmed that they had many casualties. Now, again, what does all of that tell you? That all of Israel's actions are not leading to any visible results when it comes to the resistance, the level of fierceness of the resistance, the level of capacity, the men fighting with the resistance. As a matter of fact, we're hearing the contrary from Israel. They're saying that they already have the same numbers as they had before. And I spoke about the IDF troop statements the other day, who said, or genocide forces to be more accurate, who said that Hamas are fighting us with the same determination, will, and with the same capacity and numbers. And many people in Israel and senior figures debunking the general narrative that Netanyahu is trying to push, that we dismantled the brigades and we dismantled... I mean, he said he dismantled Hamas over half a year ago. So who's fighting you? The ghosts? Who's fighting you? So what does that tell you? That's a proof that although Israel is causing grave destruction, they're not touching the capabilities of the Palestinian resistance when it comes to equipment and when it comes to people fighting them. And all of the destruction and all of the genocide and massacres and barbarism against the civilian population is to only cover up this failure against the Palestinian resistance. And they're trying to use the same methods now in Lebanon. in Lebanon, they're the same lies again. Although, they're starting to admit bit by bit how many guys did. We're having a tough time and this has been on, but the general theme is, we're progress and we're going to dismantle Hezbollah, we're going to destroy them. Sailor Jerusalem, thank you so much. Why is the world silent? They're killing everyone in Palestine. Well, I wouldn't say the world is silent. Many people are talking. As a matter of fact, very, very many people are talking. But the only reason that we feel that there is silence is because of the official position of the people in power and the leaders of all of the countries who have many people supporting the Palestinians. And that's the case in Western countries, and that's the case in Arab countries as well. You are talking about populations with varying levels of support, but we always see massive support in Western countries. However, lack of adequate action to represent the will of the people in the same countries. That's why we see the lack of action and the continued propaganda and the pushing of the genocide narrative. Now, this doesn't mean there are no changes. If people were silent, well, worse would have been happening. Worse things would have been happening. Don't forget that, of course, a big part of the changes that we're seeing is due to the, firstly, people of Gaza and the resistance in Gaza, and then the supporting fronts, but also to a very large extent, the people who are speaking up globally. Why? Because they are in populations they are populations in countries that take a supporting approach when it comes to the genocide, by denying it, by supporting the criminal, by demonizing the victim and demonizing their resistance, and legitimizing and whitewashing the crimes of the oppressors. And again, that is changing, and that is shifting. And that also raises a very large question about the true shape and meaning of democracy in any of these countries who still take such approaches despite popular rejection, and how genuine their democracies are, because democracies are supposed to be representing the will of the people and acting on behalf of the people, not there to tell the people what to do and who to sympathize with and who not to sympathize with, and warn them from sympathizing with someone who they call baddies or deem as baddies, let alone terrorize them in many cases. And again, it's changing. It's not something that is stagnant. We're seeing a lot of dynamics. We're seeing a lot of change across the world. And all of that will eventually bring results, as it has brought some results so far. And Jerry, thank you so much for that. J Artist is saying there was a court case in England about the embargo. Will it help? Is it enough? I haven't personally heard about the case of embargo in England. However, there are many cases in multiple countries. One of them is the recent genocide case against 1,000 Israeli soldiers in the ICJ. But there are cases being taken slowly in England and in other countries too. And these cases are important. Now, the question is, how far would these cases go? Because don't forget, when you talk about legalities, and we have many people in the legal profession who are very vocal about what's happening and the illegality of it, as if it needs any sort of elaboration, but their work is very important and they contribute a lot. The question is, how far will they go when it comes to the legal action? Because you need deep pockets as well to take legal action, or you need to have a large group of people willing to volunteer as well to make it happen. But all of it is important. Any action is important. Any small legal action is very important, because it would start to deter the people who are committing the crimes. Like, if you think about it, if you're a criminal, like they say, when you are the oppressor, you have a choice. No, when you're the victim, it's like you have to defend yourself. But when you're the oppressor or part of the oppressing group, you have a choice. You have a choice to participate in the general crime happening because it's being legitimized in a collective manner. It's accepted societally. It's accepted by the media. It's seen as something legit. And there is a lot of denial about the suffering of the others. The people who are seeing what's happening against their state from an official perspective, and now seeing that there is action potentially being taken against them as individuals, not only just as the state of Israel and the leading criminals of the state of Israel, well, that would deter them, wouldn't it? And if we were having more people rejecting, and we had people rejecting in Israel from the beginning, but if you have more and more, that will put Israel in a worse position. Zain is saying, Salam Mahmoud, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Is there an update on the BRICS meeting regarding the Middle East? Well, the BRICS meeting did not only talk about the Middle East, it was mentioned. The Iranian president, he highlighted the significance of the meeting taking place while we have this escalation in the Middle East and the genocide in Gaza. There was a lot of talk about changing the world from a unipolar to a multipolar world. And there was a lot of talk about changing the current world order that is really controlled primarily or dictated to an extent by the United States administration. We had, of course, calls for a ceasefire, but we haven't had anything to say like, oh, there's, at least to my knowledge, from what I've observed so far, that we are going to take, for example, collective action to try and reach a solution. The only thing that I heard just before I started this live stream, I read it somewhere, I'm not sure where, is that there was apparently, I think it was one of our members, Daniela sent it across to me, by the way, I think, about, and again, I haven't read the source, President Vladimir Putin sending a message through someone to Israel, saying that you need to stop. You need to stop what's happening in Lebanon and in Gaza. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Russia called everyone who has a Russian passport in Israel or is of Russian origin, and you're talking about over 1 million or over 1.2 million, to leave so long as there is an opportunity to leave. They never had this kind of warning for people inside of Israel, and the warning itself is shown as somewhat of a threat. And that came after Israel had a large attack near a Russian base in Syria. So signaling that, well, okay, you want to take this action against us, prepare for something from us. And there are very big tensions between Russia and Israel. Tam, Mahmoud, do you think if they cleanse the North Gaza, the IOF will use bunker busters to hit against Hamas? Well, listen, I mean, the levels of weapons they've used so far in Gaza, it's not like they're light or anything. They landed over 90,000 tons of TNT on Gaza. That's the equivalent of 5 nuclear bombs the size that landed on Hiroshima. People underestimate and downplay how much TNT this genocide state landed on Gaza when they were getting it from the genocide regime and the genocide administration in the US. So they probably could. However, the bigger question is, well, do they know where these tunnels are? All of them. That's a big question. Do they know where all of these tunnels are? And again, Israel said that we dismantled the whole tunnel system in Khan Yunis. They said that 9 months ago. And they're saying that we now closed all of the Philadelphia corridor tunnels leading to Egypt. And again, statements from genocide forces on the ground who are not necessarily supportive of Netanyahu, yet still committing a genocide, are saying the contrary to people in Israel who they have communication with. So even if they try and use bunker busts, I'm not sure how effective that would be, because you would need to know exactly where they are to have effective attacks on them to completely get rid of them. Abna Dalil, salam brother, have you read and spoke about the news that the ICC, you mean, chief prosecutor is being investigated for sexual abuse? US-Israeli threats becoming reality. Yes, and it's not surprising. It's a claim, right? So a claim about sexual harassment, no, not surprising. He received threats from US senators. Did you remember? Then we later found out that they were paid approximately $6 million US dollars by AIPAC to send that letter, threatening him, threatening his family, intimidating him. And he received death threats. That was a letter sent over. Now imagine the calls that he would have received. It's not surprising. And you know how they're trying to portray it, by the way? In the Israeli media, they're trying to say that he made the claim against Israel to cover up the sexual abuse case. And he warned the victim, if you take that case against me, I will file a lawsuit against Israel. Look how stupid and thick they are. And how imbecile the people are who absorb this type of media garbage. But that exists a lot, both in Israel and in mainstream media. The question is, what is he going to do? Are they going to take him down? Are they going to bring someone else? Because so far he still hasn't, we haven't seen them being issued, the arrest warrants. It was a threat for them to be issued. But they haven't been issued. United in Chief, so the Zionists can kill any number of innocent people, and when they are satisfied, they will agree for a ceasefire. Is the blood of Muslim and Christians in Palestine and Lebanon so cheap? Well, of course, the blood is not cheap, but some people view it as cheap. And these people are, well, of course, the supremacist Zionists and any supremacist who aligns himself with them and covers up their crimes. However, when it comes to the numbers, they do want the numbers to go up because that's part of their campaign. You're talking about a state that thrives on blood and killing and mass killing as well. Also to try and portray to their civilian population as accomplishments, like look how many people we're killing. Again, to cover up the failure, to cover up the fact that they haven't got the Israelis kidnapped in Gaza, they haven't defeated the resistance, and they did not stop the threat against them. As a matter of fact, they've increased the threat against them. But that's not necessarily the thing that they want before they reach a ceasefire. They are doing that so that the Palestinians fighting them can pay them the political price so that they can reach a ceasefire. So they want them to kneel down. This is the unfortunate case here. Israel, from its actions, is doing that in a way to kneel down the Palestinians, make them kneel down, make them submit in order to impose their political conditions and political will on them. And even with that, that does not guarantee that the killing will stop. Why? Because the killing hasn't stopped in other parts where you have less resistance, for example, or people who are constantly in peace talks with you and collaborating with you. In the case of the West Bank Authority, led by the President Mahmoud Abbas. So that's what they're trying to do. And again, it hasn't worked for a year. What makes us think that it will work this week or next month? And Sonora is asking about the general's plan that Israel's executing in North Gaza. What is this? What they're doing now, is the general's plan. The general's plan is in reference to several genocide generals in the Zionist occupying entity who came up with a plan that would tell the people of Gaza in the north, if you don't leave within X amount of days, all of you will be treated as Hamas fighters. So you're giving yourself the death sentence, or we're giving you the death sentence if you stay. That's called forced ethnic cleansing. That's what it's called. Forced genocide. And again, they brag about it and it's known, yet the level of scrutiny, at least in mainstream media, is nowhere near the level of crimes being committed, and they are implementing it. So there's a full siege on North Gaza, worse than the one that was there before. They are forcing people out from home to home, walking from home to home, demolishing buildings on the population. The civil services declared that all of the hospitals are now non-functional in North Gaza. They're not allowing rescue services to rescue the wounded or take away the dead from the streets, corpses everywhere. So they're implementing it. It's happening. And again, the only thing that we'll hear from some Western leaders that we're deeply concerned, and we're calling for a de-escalation. And Gary Tate, what about the report of Hezbollah drone flying over Tel Aviv for 4 hours? Hezbollah invade Israel whenever they want with their drones. They have been doing that from the beginning. And they did that when Israel was at the peak of readiness and alertness in the northern borders and all across many parts. Hezbollah are very, very capable. They've conducted several attacks in central Israel. One of them was simultaneously with Yemen. And again, what does that tell you? Okay, you killed the leadership. You cannot touch the operation or the weapons or even take down the level of attacks against you. Hezbollah's average daily attacks on Israel is 25. And when I say 25, I mean one missile barrage is considered one attack. And today they had one barrage of missiles that consisted of 55 missiles in 2 minutes in the Galilee. What does that tell you? That they are increasing in power and attacks against Israel, not decreasing. And again, what do we understand from that? Is the approach that Israel is taking is ineffective. If that's what you want to achieve based on your objectives. Again, and what are the objectives? Eliminating Hamas, making Gaza not pose a threat again, returning the prisoners, or what they call the hostages, and now in the north, returning the people back to the north, the squatters, and eliminating Hezbollah. That's a new thing, by the way. And note that the eliminating Hezbollah, the fact that they're saying that now can mean that they are planning to take this for a very long time. And again, what do you understand from that? Well, okay, if you said I want to eliminate Hamas, well, but I'm not done 1 year later, and now I want to eliminate Hezbollah, so I'm going on what, 1, 2, 3 more years with this? That's why all the talk about the de-escalation does not make sense. And it's only throwing sand in the eyes of the people and enabling this genocidal entity to continue its crimes. All of what the United States and the Western establishment supporting Israel have done from the beginning up until now is buy Israel time to commit a genocide. That's what they've been doing. All of the talk means nothing. Why? Because you need actions to stop them. And they've been saying all of this and supporting them, either openly or secretly. Stephen Burrows, thank you very much. Much appreciated for your super. Let's go to your next question. And again, welcome everyone. And thank you so much, by the way, for all of your participation and kind comments. And sorry if we're unable to get all of them for the limited time that we have. Marcel, Marcel Ploger, you said, thank you for that. You said the corrupt governments and their puppets will fall hard soon. In Europe and the US, and absolutely in Israel and Ukraine, they will be judged. I agree. I totally agree with you. And the reason that they will be facing this destiny is purely because they chose and insisted on being on the wrong side of history. And again, I said this yesterday, some of these people will sympathize and constantly tell you that they sympathize with the Holocaust that they haven't seen and deny a genocide happening in front of their eyes and being live streamed by the people facing the genocide. And they're not listening to their population. And they're ignoring the public demand, the increased public demand to stop this genocidal entity. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. And again, thank you so much for your contribution. Lisa Bahouth, Mahmoud, today in the BRICS, Putin actually mentioned the two-state solution. Is he stating this to be politic and lead to a one-state solution? In other words, start with two, get one? I think you have an interesting observation. Firstly, the accepted political thing is a two-state solution. Internationally speaking, from an international diplomatic tone, I absolutely disagree with that. And I think that that tone on its own should change. And we saw a shift. We saw a shift coming from elements in Russia and in China and other countries too. However, they're still talking about that because that's what's based on, UN resolutions and, diplomatic understandings and the peace process. And he could be doing that and saying that. And again, when we talk about a two-state solution, that's the thing that we need to understand here. What is the person in front of me, this politician or leader, meaning when he says a two-state solution? Does he mean a two-state solution that would include a Palestinian state with the exact same rights as the Israeli state? Meaning full sovereignty, full independence. They can have military ties with whoever they want. They can have economic ties with whoever they want. They will have full democracy. Israel will not interfere in their inner politics. Is that what they mean? Because that would be more positive than a stripped and gutted state that is merely a collection of municipalities with full control of Israel, which is what Israel historically wanted, and is now even denying completely. Now they're denying the existence of Palestine. They passed a law to ban the acceptance of any Palestinian state, and people in government do not recognize the fact that there are Palestinian people. Imposters who came from Khazaria are denying the fact, maybe just a couple of years back really, are denying the indigenous people of Palestine. That's what we have here. So again, with regards to the talk and with regards to the presentation of a two-state solution, you would want to think, what do you mean by a two-state solution? If it's Putin, then what do you mean, Mr. Putin? What do you mean, Mr. Erdogan, and anyone else, really, by that definition? And again, by now, it's evident that we are not looking for any solution. The only thing that we're looking potentially for is maybe at some point a potential ceasefire that would give some relief to the people who need it most in Gaza and of course in Lebanon. And apart from that, even if we have a ceasefire, and whenever I was asked where is this going, I had two options in my head: either continued war up until Israel ends and potentially a ceasefire with a tense situation that will escalate immediately after, because this situation has now reached a level that there is no going back from. Israel is not going to be recovering from what they've done in the past year, and they will not be getting away with it, and not the people who support them as well. So the path now appears to be more like a continued path that will constantly escalate up until the total and final demise of the genocide state. Serene is saying, Mahmoud, as you know, Saudi and the UAE have joined BRICS. What are your thoughts on this? I don't trust in Saudi and UAE. Well, with regards to trust, I think we spoke about trust yesterday. Someone asked me if you trust Erdogan or if you trust anyone. I said, it's not about trust, and I don't think you should trust any leader, whether you agree with their policies more or less, as in have full trust in. Mm-hmm. But you can, of course, have more trust in or more faith in, because based on their patterns and their previous actions and words and current actions and words, they prove to be that they are people of their word. And on the opposing side, you have pathological or hyper-pathological liars. But with regards to Saudi and the UAE, look, Saudi and the UAE, even if they might choose certain ties with Israel, that does not, or the US, that does not mean they are fully under the control of the US or Israel. For example, UAE, they've had a recent peace treaty, right? And under what is labeled as the Abraham Accords. You've had tensions with them. Not once, not twice, and not 3 times. And of course, you can disagree wholeheartedly with the concept of normalization with a genocide state and with the policies in general and with the lack of action or adequate action to the level of suffering of the Palestinian people from any state that you are saying that they're not doing enough. But with regards to them joining the BRICS, it's because they clearly don't view the United States as the be-all and end-all. And they know that the days of the US as the only superpower across the world are not going to last forever. As a matter of fact, the events that we're witnessing in front of us are showing that their fall as an empire is accelerating more than many people anticipated and expected. There was an argument that Ukraine started to accelerate it further and further, but now with the genocide in Gaza, it quadrupled it, because all of a sudden, and again, they have no one to blame but themselves and their decision makers and policy makers and think tanks and everyone in charge. The level of hostility they had against other nations attracted so much hostility against their administrations. And it started to unite their opponents. And that's something that is not done by a smart person in power. A smart person in power tries to divide his enemies. Now, of course, they do with the typical propaganda and garbage, but in effect, what they have done through their hostile approach and recklessness and support of genocide and mass crimes against humanity is show the other parts of the world that this country is reckless and cannot be trusted at an administrational level. And there are many people in the United States who argue, well, why are we tarnishing our image, not as if the United States foreign policy image across the world was ever great, but why are we making it so much worse by totally supporting a country committing genocide in accordance to the ICJ, by the ICJ? Why? So both Saudi and the UAE, they realize that. Agree, disagree with what they are, that's valid, totally valid. But when it comes to the BRICS, when it comes to their economies, they might be seeing as the continued support of Israel, of the United States for Israel, is not necessarily really good for the region. So let's say the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they just want to be out of it. And they want stability, political and financial stability. Well, is what the US doing bringing any stability? No. Plus, they just had a confirmation to Iran, who spoke with both of them, the foreign minister. He went and visited these countries. They outright made statements, Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia, we will not allow our territories to be used in an attack against Iran. And again, of course, we wouldn't want to be talking and we wouldn't want to be having this conversation. The conversation we'd be having is, what are you doing to stop the genocide in Gaza? Or what have you been doing to prevent this genocidal entity from even thinking of touching a Palestinian? This is what we should be talking about. But with that being said, they do have certain policies that don't always necessarily align with the United States. And the other superpowers are growing. China is growing and is providing assurances. Russia is growing and is also showing that it's there to stay and there to grow. And that's not necessarily going to be against these countries. And I hope that elaborates. That was from Serene. Sam's saying, but Mahmoud, do you have any opinion on the possible reasons of the terrorist attack on Kaan making site in Turkey? It seems US, Israel is behind this. Well, the nature of the attack, a terror attack against a facility where they manufacture fifth generation fighter jets, a Muslim country, having so much advancement when it comes to fighter jets and drones and supplying them and proving itself to be a big player regionally and globally too. Many people would be, disappointed with that. In particular, people who are interested in that market and people who are interested in making a country like Turkey weak. So there is a very strong argument that the United States administration and Israel could be behind it. Of course, implemented by anyone who is brainwashed by any argument, because this is how it and what it boils down to eventually. But I don't think it would have like a significant impact. I mean, Turkey suffered many coup attempts. Lots of financial problems. You remember when Trump was there and what he imposed on them. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be successful, but indeed the United States and Israel both have an interest in making Turkey weaker. Trevor, you said about Russia dispatching delegation to Israel to talk about a ceasefire and other related matters. What's your take on this? Yes, we mentioned that earlier on, and I think that's probably the final call from Putin to Israel. Previously, he asked all Israelis to go, all Russian origin Israelis as well, to leave so long as they can, which is an act of a threatening act on its own. And now it's as if he's telling Netanyahu, firstly, stop. And again, we don't know the contents exactly of this letter, but, stop now or. And when we say or, he's going to be on the opposing side. Putin is going to be on the side of Iran, not on the side of Israel. And Serene, you're asking about my thoughts on Israel saying that they want to start settling in Gaza. The Israelis saying they want to start settling in Gaza is more accurately the thieves starting to say that they want to squat over the bodies of dead innocent civilians and children and in occupied Gaza. That's the more accurate description. And that is a representation of Israel for you. That is a prime example of what Israel is and was about and how it was established and how it continues to establish itself. as a genocidal, violent, supremacist, Jewish supremacist entity. It calls itself a Jewish supremacist entity, using Judaism as a front to its Zionist neo-colonialist project and believing that other people are below them and that they are entitled to their lands. That's why you see these people, settlers, squatters, really, coming up, the religious Zionists, coming up with statements and quotes and, biblical promises. And they have, supposedly they have biblical promises to settle in Lebanon too. There's a new settler movement saying, the importance of South Lebanon in the Holy Bible. Oh, really? So it's a prime example of a genocidal, ethno-supremacist state. And Aini, thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. Delirious, you're asking about the subject here. If Iran has a plan to invade Israel, would it not make sense to have already began on a path through Syria? And when Iran does choose to invade, would it make sense, the most sense, to move via Syria? Absolutely, that's definitely one of the routes. Firstly, they have been established in Syria for a very long time. Syria played a very big role in the establishment of and the strengthening of the resistance fronts in general. Iran has many bases that it fully controls in Syria. They can have as many men as they want inside of Syria. However, they can also do that in Lebanon as well. And when we talk about a potential invasion from Syria and from the occupied Golan Heights, well, that's just next to the Lebanese borders. So there will be somewhat of a combination between the two fronts. It would not make sense just to focus on one of them and then avoid the other. That is, unless they have a surprise for us and they would come from where Israel did not expect them to come. And Stephen Boros, thank you again for your supers at 90K subscribers. Hope to see 100K by the new year. Thank you so much, my friend. Much appreciated. Hopefully, and of course, the main thing is to continue and providing the work and being as productive as possible. Think before you type. You said, what do you think the US and Western governments are finding themselves thinking along with their aircraft carrier in the Middle East? Well, listen, can you see the things that are happening at the same time? BRICS getting stronger, what is labeled as the global South or the East rising up. That's the majority of the world, over 80% of the world, against the US empire, small, tiny minority, cliquist, elitist, controlling the whole world, and the rise of the Palestinian case and the sinking of the US empire with its aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And again, this is a process. This is not something that happens in one day or 1 month or 1 year. The ending of an empire isn't always quick and isn't always smooth. As a matter of fact, it's very ugly in many cases. And I think the US empire is insisting on making it as ugly as possible. And they have plans. They have plans how to play things about from now up until Israel collapses and after the Israel collapses. And again, I think after Israel collapses, you'll still face a problem with the US administration, by the way, because I don't think the US is going anywhere. It's going to remain a superpower. And they're going to see, what can be done in Palestine after Israel. But in the meantime, they're making a lot of money. Who's making a lot of money? The MIC and the people benefiting from this war, the career politicians, everyone making money. They're profiteering up until they see the demise of Israel. Say, fund, steal as much from the taxpayers' money, send to the military-industrial complex, corrupt politicians, bribe who you ever need to bribe in the middle so we can make things work. And, if they die, they die. What can we do? But they will have a plan. I mean, surely they will start to prepare for the day after Israel. I'll take the last one from Serene here again. Looking at the situation and the low morale within the IOF, do you think there will be a mutiny or retaliation soon? Well, I would firstly say that the low morale and the low numbers in the IOF are censored to a very large extent. Israel is not portraying the scale of damage that the Israeli genocide forces are facing, whether when it comes to people going and serving, people killed and wounded. And with regards to the low morale, well, they are the ones sending them there. And again, if you're the oppressor, you have a choice. Either I refuse or I follow orders. You're made to be an animal in this case. Like you're put in a position of total obedience, even if it's for the biggest crimes on earth, with the state supporting you. Now, I think that the retaliation or lack thereof, if you mean by the way, when it comes to Israel, wouldn't necessarily be dictated by that, because they would want something that would give them a good image. That's number one. And if you're talking about the opposite side, they are doing what they can to drain Israel as much as possible. And the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is still there makes them successful, because Benjamin Netanyahu is playing on that card as well, to a level where very senior analysts in Israel believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, it's as if he was a person planted there, who is planted there to lead Israel into oblivion, because what he's doing is only causing destruction, harm, bad image to Israel, lack of security, more risk, more danger, more threats, more attacks. Like the people, when they saw the attacks of Iran, when they're seeing the constant attacks from Hezbollah, what would they be thinking in their head? Or at least, the people with a functioning brain in Israel. We could have avoided this 5 months ago by accepting a ceasefire. That's if we don't want to say they could have stopped any of this from the beginning, when Hamas told them we're immediately willing to stop the operation. We only did it because you weren't cooperative. We have people kidnapped in prisons and dying. Our people are oppressed. You are overlooking our cause and we need a solution. Therefore, we resorted to this operation. They could have stopped it there as well and bought themselves some more time. No, they chose the path of hate-filled vengeance, withdrew the plan of ethnic cleansing in Gaza, because they have plans of ethnic cleansing. Don't forget that they ended in 1948. That's why they're calling it Nakba now, or catastrophe. And they decided to go and follow this path of mass murder and genocide and ethnic cleansing attempts for the Palestinian population. And we also where that led Israel to, but we still haven't seen where it's actually definitely leading Israel to. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you so much for everyone who sent supers, Oha25, Stephen Burrows, Aini Anwar, Marcel, Stephen again, and Sailor Jerry Swallow. Apologies again if I haven't reached, of course, the majority of your comments, just for the time restrictions, but I'll hopefully be with you with another video, and I'll hopefully have a live stream as well tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe and blessed, and enjoy the rest of your evening, morning, or afternoon, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Take care.